When you put the question that way, that means you have oversimplified the matter. But let's
so that you can break it down for us.
The beautiful thing is that, as at the last time the minister spoke at the beginning of this whole container gate or container saga, he said the containers are in the port. Kojo, the conversation would have been different if the containers had left the port and they were in the custody of what? ECG. And ECG, and then the containers got lost from the yard of ECG. Not so. But in this regard, the containers are within the port of the Republic of Ghana, and it's within the control of GPHA and Ghana Customs. My candid opinion is containers cannot get missing. They can be misplaced. If they get lost at sea, you are immediately what? Informed. Since there is no record to the fact that containers got lost at sea, container, because of the international supply chain logistics, there's a platform. When you key in a container, the way bill, who was in control of the container, all of that is there. I just think, we should dial it down a notch. Let's all assist the minister, because we all need to get to the bottom of this, to get to the bottom of where each container sits. And I think it's just a matter of all of us, including ECG, including the two state agencies who are in control of the port, have a proper sit down, go through the paperwork, run it through the system, and definitely we'll come to the right conclusions.
So are you saying the containers are there at the ports?
What I'm saying is the containers cannot get missing. At worst, they have been misplaced, or the only other option of a container leaving the port is through an auction. So there's also a database that will show which containers have been auctioned. So let's just use the system, because international supply chain logistics is one thing that is sacrosanct. Like, they are very, very particular on it. A container's number lives with it till the day it dies. When the container is dying, that number also dies. When it's decommissioned for people to do container homes and all of that, the number dies with that container, and then new ones are generated. So it's something that we should look at it in that regard. So the whole conversation is ECG, yeah, it's okay, fine. In every home there are issues, but the conversation now is this: let's situate it. The containers were in the port.
2024, 2023, even 2022, we experienced a lot of doomsday in this country, but Mr. Mahama never published a doomsday timetable when his own consumers and Ghanaians requested for that. Why didn't you publish the doomsday timetable when we asked for it?
So you see, at that point we had a straight conversation with everybody and said our situation was fluid. You had power plants. You go to a period where there's heat, and that's the peak during the Christmas time and all of that. Those are machines, they are running. When the cold starts to kick in, you cannot anticipate which machine will shut down or which. So we were having a very fluid situation. If it was that there was a specific convo concerning it, yes, why would we not do that? You understand? And then also there were certain jobs that were being done that were critical jobs that we felt that okay, we could do it within this short space of time and close the gap.
But if you look at the power generation data between January to June, for example, we're losing about 200-300 megawatts of load, and
when you are
and that was consistent.
So if you're losing, it's based on something. What is it based on? Because today we
were made to understand that it was a fuel problem, wasn't it?
So there are days. That's why I said there are management issues. There are days that it's a fuel problem. If it's a fuel problem and you can plug the gap, if delivery is not done on time, or so you have promised you that you are going to deliver, how can you give a timetable when then you give a timetable then it's delivered? Then what happens? There are situations in the utility that are very, very fluid. If you make a mistake and you give wrong information out there, it will cost you money, in the sense that if the customer is not there to consume or to use the service that you are providing, because don't forget it's metered, and this is something that if it doesn't pass through, you don't make money.
Yes, but with all the digital improvements you made to ECG, I feel as fluid as the situation was, you could use these platforms to inform us, because
we haven't reached there yet.
On the 8th of April last year, for example, you told journalists that we are not shedding any load, so we are not going to publish any load shedding timetable. Then on the 9th, we shared about 250, 300.
What happened? I don't quite remember. You have the specific days, but
yes,
that would mean that definitely something major happened the next day. It's either you have a pipeline constraint, but those compressors going down. Do you know how last minute
on the 9th
when you
we shared load, on the 10th we shared load, on the 11th.
So let's say a compressor goes off. The engineers working on the compressor. Oh, we'll be done in about just 4 hours. So just give us some time. We get back to that. Oh, we'll be done in another. Just give us time. Everybody has how quick, or they don't want to disappoint the system and all of that. So the same way you will beat us, that's the same way we will also beat whoever the engineer is. Let me be very honest with you. The cost of unsold energy is detrimental to ECG. It's in ECG's interest to make sure that there's power running and there's power being given to its customers to make the requisite money. Because we got KPMG wants to do an audit to show us, and it's alarming. The cost of unsold energy is huge.
Yes, I think that the metering and the collection is a major challenge that we need to confront. You see, with the other issues, even with the committee's work, they actually came up with several other challenges, which they actually categorized into three. They mentioned one that is ECG administration challenges, which or the challenge that actually emanates from ECG administration. And then they also mentioned ones which also has to do with ECG operations. And then obviously there are the external ones like the forest losses that ECG suffers, which obviously they don't have any control over it. Now, when you look at the administrative challenges, they talked about this procurement abuse as currently it is the discussion that is in town now. But in terms of the operational challenges, the high losses which emanate from the collection and the commercial losses, these are an area that I think that we have to look at it. And then, so if you look at the CSOs and what they are all actually proposing, is how well we be able to resolve that challenge. Because you can't say that you've sold power and you're not collecting the money back. And I always say this, currently ECG per their mix will have more than 50% of their meters on prepaid. So it means that even before somebody uses power, about 50% of that amount power usage has been paid for. So you are left with just about less than 50% to collect, to augment, to actually pay off what you have been able to supply, and that becomes a challenge. So I see that we can look at it holistically, but this is something that with or without even the PSP now, we should find solutions to.
So that if we're able to collect enough revenue, we'll be able to pay the IPPs for the power they supply, and we'll have no crisis in the sector. So we opted for option 2, and we wanted the last mile, as we call it, that is the metering and the revenue collection, to be broken into several business districts. So if you are in Dansoman, for instance, you could be served by one business, a particular business unit, with the company delivering the services. That company will have to invest in the meter installation and maintenance and provide services in terms of the distribution and the collection of the revenues. And ECG then retain ownership of the assets. And so that is what the position we opted for. We did so because we were worried that between a private monopoly and a state monopoly will be better. And so we didn't want a transfer of ECG's monopoly in the distribution sector to a private monopoly. And that is why we thought that bringing about some competition, breaking it, the whole ECG last mile into business units serves a better interest. It creates also opportunities for Ghanaian businesses to participate. Once you break them down into small business units, the capital outlay may not be excessively high for Ghanaian businesses, to be able to raise the capital, to be able to participate in this venture.
And just when we thought that you were out of public service, they dragged you back into it.
Yes, well, that is, I guess, a little contribution we can make to the nation.
Great. So, having had a look at ECG as a state entity and coming up with these recommendations, what did you uncover? Is ECG such a hopeless entity, or there is still hope for a better tomorrow for ECG?
Well, that is a very loaded question because it depends on what we as a country are willing to do and force them to do, and how disciplined we ourselves are also going to be. We found that most of the governance and management malaise and problems the management of ECG are accepting influence from outside and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So whether we as a people want to stop this kind of what people normally refer to as undue influence from outside, and whether the managers themselves will also manage the entity as it should be, as a mandate from the people and a service to the people, is what I found surprising, and a question that we have to answer as to how to go forward. But if it is also true that after how many years we still cannot keep our hands off the utility, and then the only way to give the utility professional independence to do what they should do is to bring in private participation, and if that's what we select as a country, then I guess that's what we will have.
But this influence that you speak of, is it political influence?
I wouldn't call it political. Some of it is not actually political. It's self-interest and all this kind of thing. So it is not just political people, it's business people, it's people who have something to sell, something to offer, and everybody pulling weight and rank to get it done, and that kind of thing. So it goes beyond mere political influence. A lot of it is business influence and so on.
Your first recommendation, yes, please go on.
Sorry, and of course, self-interest is also, you can see that as well.